Welcome, friends of the channel. We've got some proper consumer journalism today. Behind me, you can see it's the next chapter in the Macan story, and it's actually a really important day for Porsche engineering, really. The Taycan obviously kick-started the manufacturer's pivot, if you like, into e-mobility. That was a car that was from the ground up an EV. The cars behind me, that's Porsche's first foray into a vehicle that from the outset had an internal combustion engine, and it's taken that away, putting in the e-mobility while still trying to ensure that these cars remain very much a Porsche. What we've got behind me are the two bookends of the all-wheel drive electric Macan lineup. We've got the Macan 4 over my right shoulder is the Macan Turbo. So we're going to give both of these cars behind me a drive today to see if there is still that quintessential Porsche DNA in place for the Macan, and also compare the 4 against the Turbo. So here at Porsche Centre Reading, we are about to jump into the Macan 4 and the Macan Turbo. So, I mean, unbelievably, I still consider the Macan to be a new vehicle at Porsche, but the reality is it's 10 years old now. It's almost on the cusp of qualifying for Porsche Classic with the early models. In that 10 years, there's been 800,000 Macans delivered worldwide, an incredible number. 50,000 of them have come here to the UK. So it's a really important model, not just for Porsche GB, but for Porsche globally. It's called kind of internally as the Goldilocks model. It's kind of got the best of everything involved. It needs to have like sports car credentials, but also it needs to be a real utility vehicle that will do everything. So it's a hell of a legacy that the first 10 years of the Macan story has put down, but arguably the next chapter is even more important because, as we know, the internal combustion engine is being ditched for the Macan lineup and is being replaced in favour of e-mobility. So this is really important, particularly as this Macan has to build into that Porsche philosophy and Porsche DNA, and that is to look and feel like a Porsche. It's going to be really interesting to see how the company instills that in this car, ultimately without that internal combustion engine. Two vehicles we're testing today, the Macan 4 and the Macan Turbo. So I'll spin you round. So we're outside Porsche Cars Great Britain. Everybody else has left because I think I'm the only one doing video today. But here's some of the press cars. And this is my beast for the morning up to the Experience Centre at Silverstone. So it's the Macan 4. You might call the purist spec, okay? Because there's not a great deal on it. So we're kind of having a good look really at pretty much what the Macan looks like out of the box as we slide in and swap to this camera. So, let's close this door. Here we are then, on board the future of Porsche, certainly away from the 911 lineup. A completely different beast to that GT car sitting to my left. But again, this is kind of the point of Porsche, is there's a car for everybody, but also a car for every occasion. The day, really, it's going to be quite vloggy in style because there's a lot of moving parts to today. So first of all, we're going to drive this purist spec Macan 4 up to the Porsche Experience Centre at Silverstone. We're going to have a go on track to test its dynamic capabilities, and then we're going to try the top of the range turbo as well to get a pretty good marker of the gateposts. The model designated simply Macan is the entry level, that's rear wheel drive. You've then got the Macan 4, which is this, 4-wheel drive. You've then got the 4S, which sits above that, and then you've got the top of the range turbo, which is all-wheel drive, sitting at the top of the tree, okay? Both of the Macans that we're testing today, the 4 and the Turbo, use the 100 kilowatt battery. Starting price for this Macan 4 that I'm in now is 71,200. With options, it's an extra 7 grand on top. What have we got? Extended leather interior in black, comfort seats, 14-way electric, Isofix, a grand's worth of roof rails in black aluminium, extended tow bar system, a sport chrono package, which you can see with a clock there, Porsche electric sport sound, and surround view with active parking support. That is it. So it's pretty bare, pretty basic, certainly by Porsche standards, by Porsche press car standards. So it's a really great opportunity to see what this Macan is like right out of the block. 0 to 62 in 5.2 seconds, a top speed of 137 mile an hour. Weights 2.3 tons, and you've got a range anywhere between 321 and 380 miles. What's interesting, by the way, is the Turbo isn't just the quickest model in terms of acceleration, it also charges slightly quicker as well, which I quite like. So we'll dive into the detail of this a little bit more on the road. Let's kick on and see what the future, well, not the future, the present Macan is like. Right, so first things first is to get adapted. I'd like to know. There we go. Bringing the wheel towards us. Right, so I'm told we've got the start button there, press the brake and select a gear to establish readiness for operation. We're going to laugh watching this back in 50 years' time, I'm adamant. Right, so I think, therefore, we can go. Amazing. So we've got an early doors victory for e-mobility, because in the front where the internal combustion engine used to be, we've got extra stowage space. The electric Macan has 2 motors, one on the front axle, one on the rear. It's not there for nostalgia, it's there for a reason. The reason being is to accommodate rear axle steering. We're looking at this not from the point of view of, is it a sports car? It's, does it deliver in all other aspects of your Porsche lifestyle? And I have to say, so far, it definitely is doing that. Something I've really noticed, and the company started this with the Taycan, or arguably on the 911 actually, with the 992. In terms of EVs, started it on the Taycan, is the feel of that front axle is unmistakably Porsche. If I was blindfolded, had cans over my ears so I couldn't hear any perceptible sound, driving a Taycan through its seating position, really low, hunkered to the floor, and the feel of that front axle, I would be able to tell I'm in a Porsche. There's a synergy with the 992 generation 911 in that regard. And I have to say, so far, pleasingly, it pulls through to this. Obviously, I am higher because it's an SUV, but really nice seating position relative to the steering wheel. And again, just the feel through that front axle, really nice, a nice amount of feedback. It's definitely, I think, a thing, the Porsche front axle and the feel of the front axle. And the Macan EV definitely has that. Look at this road, so it's a bit of a squiggle, bit of foot down. Okay, so I tell you what, road hold is awesome. It obviously does feel like a heavy machine, heavy beast, but that was impressive. Didn't have anywhere near the body roll I was expecting actually, and again, really nice feel through the wheel. Okay, so obviously quick enough, there was never any doubt in that really. Not too quick though, and actually I quite like the delicacy of the controls, like with the accelerator, a slight lift off, it'll gently kind of roll back. It's not quite a one pedal car scenario, but again, and I'm just changing like the views of the screen ahead of me, the display will tell me whether you're basically regenerating energy or whether you're using it. And again, there's a really nice delicacy between the two as it flips. It's quite a harmonious drive. I mentioned this is like the pretty much like a Bogo spec Macan 4. What does that mean? What doesn't it have that you might like to consider, I guess? Well, the first thing is that rear axle steering. As I said, the whole reason the rear motor is mounted where it is to accommodate that on the Macan. It doesn't have rear axle steering. It has the steel suspension, which means it doesn't have air suspension. It doesn't have power steering plus either. Now, personally, I would be looking to have all of those within the Macan, and the Turbo we're going to try later does have those. Reason being, it does feel like quite a big, quite a long car. What rear axle steering does, if you don't know, is aids low speed agility, so tight manoeuvring spaces in urban areas, but high speed agility. And again, just with the size of this, I'd quite like it, particularly like for lower speed stuff, to be honest. And the great thing is you can really see it in action. Fantastic bit of kit, I would definitely be looking at that. The other thing is in terms of damping on this, so whilst I'm quite impressed with how it handles corners dynamically, I feel this could definitely benefit from that with the settings as is, and I'm currently, again, so this is standard steel suspension, I'm in normal driving mode, normal chassis mode, and at lower speeds, so in that 30 to 40 mile an hour round town sort of scenario, does feel a bit clunky, a bit too firm for my liking, a bit too shaking you around. I don't think passengers would particularly enjoy that experience. So I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what the air suspension is like a little bit later. And the other thing that I mentioned, the other worthwhile option that I'd definitely be looking into is Power Steering Plus, which again, just for manoeuvrability around town, just makes the steering wheel a little bit light. And I find that at lower speeds, again, The weight of the steering is quite hefty, it's quite cumbersome, not particularly elegant. So I would be looking at that as a potentially worthwhile option. So I'm already seeing, at least in my head, where I would build up the spec of my EV Macan. Right, coming down to a 40, which again, you can just let off. Kind of reminds me of engine braking, really. So this did have electric sport sound, spec'd in for a couple of £100. Let's put it on. The faintest hum thus far. Admittedly, I'm not really on the gas. We're going straight over here by the looks of it, so let's hold back. Okay, gives you that spaceship sound. I'd rather just an engine note in there, personally. Yeah, it's a hard pass from me, that one, I have to say. Hard pass. Drive modes can be accessed via the mode wheel, but also via the screen. You've got off-road, normal, sport and sport plus. Let's stick it in sport for a little bit. But what sport mode definitely does is make the accelerator more reactive and just the same inputs that I was previously doing on the pedal are showing on the display to be far more potent in terms of power in, but also power off. There's just a bit more aggression to it, while still actually delivering a really nice, harmonious, seamless drive. I like it.
To surmise then, the Macan 4 has fantastic road holding capabilities and is fast enough without being rapid. However, the ride is a little shaky at low speed, and the car does have a larger than expected turning circle. The steering too can feel quite heavy and cumbersome compared to other models in the Porsche range.
We've just got to the Experience Centre here at Silverstone. So yeah, a couple of things. I just want to go through the stats first of all, because stats are important, particularly for the dubious watching this. So look, just under 2 hours and 70 miles. I'd pop my driving style in the enthusiastic category. And that's what we've returned. In terms of battery usage, less than a quarter used. So yeah, I think that's pretty respectable overall, to be honest. Again, for an enthusiastic drive, going through a range of driving modes from off-road, normal, sport and sport plus, so the full accoutrement of driving styles used. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, I have to say. I think, you know, that if I was to drive like that for 8 hours, I think that's pretty good in terms of range. So I'm very impressed on range. I am pretty confident that I wouldn't have range anxiety, therefore, in driving this thing, so we can kind of banish that as a thing of the past. The other thing I want to point out is build quality. It is absolutely exceptional in here, and I think really marks Porsche in particular among other brands. Obviously it's silent, so you're going to hear absolutely everything, but you know, there was not a single creak or rattle the entire journey. So really, really well built, and this has been definitely run in now. Look at, just under 1,500 miles. So really impressed with the build quality as well. The other thing I like, and this might be my negligence, but is this A-pillar, and here it's so good in terms of all-round visibility, okay? There's a lot of manufacturers make the mistake of having a big chunky frame and it just blocks visibility, but as a driver, as you can see, all-round visibility is absolutely excellent, and Porsche has nailed it because it's putting a little pane of glass in there rather than a big pillar on the door there. So yeah, overall, I have to say, absolutely exceptional. I'm really, really, really impressed. First time I've been here in quite a while, actually. It's really nice to be back. Believe it or not, we've just been out on track with the Macan Turbo. Unfortunately, I couldn't film, but I can at least prove that we went out on track just by virtue of the tyres, which I hope you can see there, have been scrubbed in. We'll say that. We'll definitely say that. So yes, after the Macan 4 that we drove earlier, which was kind of Billy Basic really in terms of spec and everything else, we've gone right to the top of the tree really for the current Macan EV range, and that's with the Macan Turbo. At this stage, we need to address the elephant in the room. It is called a turbo. It doesn't have a turbocharger. I think, like, you know, if you can't accept that at this stage, you need to get with the program really. Porsche going forward has been quite clear in its communication that turbo is an expression of performance and expression of the package rather than the physicality of a turbocharger. Porsche also is making sure that the turbo models, this is across the range going forward, nice. It differentiates from the rest of the lineup, which is important, particularly for like the EV lineup, because you can't just lump a bigger displacement engine in or stick a physical turbocharger to it. So how is Porsche doing it with the Macan? Well, there's some styling cues, including a new badge, which, as you can see, it's called Turbonite. It's a different colour. It's like a monotone, really. It doesn't have any of like the red or what used to be orange on the Stuttgart coat of arms as part of the Porsche crest. That, by the way, follows inside with the steering wheel, which likewise has the Porsche crest in Turbonite. There are also other bits of standard specification on the turbo, again, to differentiate, one of which is Porsche torque vectoring. Basically is an electronic differential which comes on the Macan Turbo, which that's a standard spec which doesn't come on the Macan 4. So again, I'm expecting this, aside from the obvious power gains and torque gains that this car will have over the entry-level all-wheel drive Macan EV, I'm expecting this to drive differently as well. Let's dive in and see how we get on.
The Turbo's battery was topped up over lunch at the Experience Centre, so with the charger removed, it was time to slide into the fastest and most powerful EV yet in the Macan lineup.
Super duper. So, wow, okay, yeah, look, this is very different already. I mentioned the Turbonite badge ahead of me, marking the fact that this is a turbo. We've got contrast stitching in here. We've got different seats as well. These feel like sports seats, which are definitely wider at the shoulders, and there's definitely more lateral support there for the midriff as well. There's some nice carbon in there, of which the quality looks outstanding. So I mentioned like with the standard spec. So looking at the Macan 4 we had earlier with 387 horsepower in old school terms, and or 408 horsepower with launch control maximum. 650 newton meters of torque. Well, the turbo is a step on from that. 639 horsepower, that's with launch control. Maximum torque, 1,130, so pretty much double the torque. Bigger brakes, as you would expect. Slightly heavier, as you would expect. 22-inch wheels we've got here. Extended leather pack, rear axle steering optional. Yeah, look, all in, this is 96,900. Base level, base price, with options 108. So probably 30% extra really in terms of cost. Four-wheel drive, yeah, adaptive air suspension as standard alongside Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus and Power Steering Plus as standard. So, okay, already that's got a lot of bits that I perhaps was looking for with the Macan 4. Is all instilled here, ready and waiting to go. So with that in mind, let's head on. I like how Porsche is still gapping the turbo compared to other cars in the lineup, because the turbo's always been an iconic model at Porsche. Started with the 911, bled through to other model lines. And it's not just about, and this is so pleasing, I think, with EVs, it's not just about giving it a load more power and torque. Porsche still is differentiating the model mechanically, which is fantastic. This is a different wheel as well compared to what we just had in the Macan 4. It feels smaller and the rim feels thinner. It's just a lot nicer to hold. The seats, as I said, they're a lot better ergonomically, possibly even yeah, the other seats weren't uncomfortable. These just fit my frame better. I'm a lot more snug in them. That sounds great, whatever's going around there, past the wing. Anyway, out and left, I was told. So we're all in normal mode completely at the moment. So I'm expecting big power, but I want to see if there's more to it than that. And actually... Okay, that's in normal mode. Hilarious. Okay, so it's obviously a lot quicker. We knew that. What I will say is, and this is interesting, so we're on the bigger 22-inch wheels. Again, I'd pop the ride quality in the firm category, but in comparison to the Macan 4, which had smaller wheels but with steel suspension, doesn't have as much of the crashiness to it. So that's a bit of a win, despite the fact it's on the bigger wheels. I personally probably wouldn't spec the bigger wheels. I don't think it's completely necessary. Over a bump. Yeah, okay, yeah, the air suspension definitely just takes the edge off compared to the steel setup. So that's a big win already. Don't know if you're seeing this, but when you change mode wheel, the lighting around the interior changes, which is quite cool. And then this bit of the door card also goes red when there's a car going past your blind spot, which I also really like. There's definitely more of a focus, sharpness to the ride of the turbo. Let's stick it into sport now and just start winding it on. So we've got that noise, which as earlier, the spaceship style noise. Not a fan of that. I'd rather have the gruff bark and cackle of a GTS combustion engine noise pumping through. So there's definitely less body roll. Wow, that is ridiculously fast. I have to curtail speed there. Ridiculously fast. Yeah, you're going to pull out there, are you? That's a great move. Oh, I much prefer how this handles. Much prefer how this handles. Okay, so all Macans are 1 speed rather than the Taycan, which is 2 speed. But again, there's a really nice, how can I put it? Maybe like a delicacy, dare I say it, to the pedals. This, to be honest, is exactly what I was expecting an EV Macan to drive like. I've got the very best of what I said earlier that the 4 has, which is that really nice, proper Porsche front axle. Definitely has that. But just with a bit more agility, a bit more sharpness. It's just more dialed in. Other than the noise, the spaceship noise, which I just wouldn't have, and the pre-flight checks, there's like objectively nothing here to not like. Oh, look at that, E30. Beautiful. Yeah, it's got power, but it's also got a bit more control in the corners that just clearly is lacking in the 4.
Sport Plus mode really is for the track, but in the interest of journalism and possible entertainment, I'll offer a quick dabble with it here, where I get to know the headrest a bit better, pull a funny face and proclaim that is absurd, before delivering an observation between it and other driving modes.
That is absurd. Definitive layers to the accelerative capabilities of this car. Whereas with a 4, they're obviously closer together with the turbo between normal, sport and sport plus. The different rates of acceleration are marked.
Not just exceptionally fast then, the turbo is more agile than the 4, helped considerably by rear axle steering, as you'll see from this footage. To confirm, this is the rear axle of the Macan Turbo, not the front. Simply put, the Macan Turbo EV corners more convincingly than the 4, though it will move around and even break traction if you're exceedingly heavy-footed. So, 2 different drives here. Let's head back to Porsche GB HQ at Reading and wrap this up.
What a fab day it's been. Certainly in terms of delivering on the objective of taking the Macan into the electric generation while still giving or instilling it with that Porsche DNA, I think has been an overwhelming success for Porsche. They've absolutely nailed the brief on that. In terms of 4 versus turbo, obviously 2 different gate posts really for the all-wheel drive electric Macan. There are bits of both that I quite like. I think the answer for me, and as great as this car is, I think the answer for me is probably a 4 with a few choice options on it that admittedly comes on the turbo as standard. For example, rear axle steering, air suspension and power steering plus. I said it at the start of the video and it rang true. What I really liked about the 4 is the power was really usable, really accessible. This thing is so fast, but using it on the public road, well, your chances to do that are going to be quite limited. Thanks very much to Porsche GB for allowing us to try both of these cars. As I said, a very important milestone really in taking e-mobility into a car that was born at the outset with a combustion engine. I'm absolutely certain that e-mobility is a worthy next chapter in the Macan story. Thanks for watching 9wax TV, and we'll see you soon.